Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities Show. My name is Ben Maldonado. We are recording here on Friday, the 23rd, 15 minutes or so before the close. As always, I'm here with my partner, Barry Hederachi. Barry, how we doing?
Doing good, doing good.
Almost another month in the books, Barry.
Yeah, man.
We
And
got
and a short week on top of that.
at least it's leap year, and we got the 29th of February. We
Mm-hmm.
get one more day.
Yep.
Anyway, the looks like the die has been cast on the ES. What say you after this ferocious Nvidia induced rally?
Well, it looks like there's more upside. We can get into it. I'm gonna go over that, and there's some other alternatives that I saw in the with the squares.
Hmm.
And so yeah, we'll dig into it in a second. What are you
And we
covering
could
today on commodity side?
yeah, I was going to say on the commodities, the commodities is like a dead space now. So I'm going to cover cotton and then the saga of natural gas as it hopes to and tries
Oh,
to
I have
find
something to show
a
you on
bottom.
that.
It's
Something to
trying
set
to
up.
find a bottom, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But I think we could spend a lot of time on the big five that you cover, which is the E-minis, bonds, gold, crude, copper, the dollar, and the euro, because they're money is just and I don't think it's not leaving commodities because it's not violent moves down. It's just sort of like it's not like it's a lot of selling. It's just there's not a lot of buying yet.
Hmm.
It's sort
Hmm.
of waiting for something, and we'll see. But we'll talk about it.
Yep.
So what
Well,
say ye about the ES here?
we're back to well, we talked about 49.46 last week, that being the key level, well, the week
Hmm.
before. And we had that little triangle building up. Of course, we broke to the upside. And we always talk about breaking above, holding above. I mean, here's a case here where we broke above a main square 90 and we held above right there and traded higher. What happened over here with 49.46, the same story, right? We bounced up a few times and got on top of it, rallied, retest, a little bit of a rally, retest again, and all of them held well above 49.46,
Hmm.
which of course is very bullish, and off we went. And we're holding a very good steep angle, so the market's healthy. What we do have coming is we have 360 days, trading days from the low in October. That's coming up, well, yeah, 29th, end of the month. And it's possible, if we get it up into 5,300, that would square out
Hmm.
and give us a nice square. And that would also give us about 90-day run from the low in October of last year.
Right.
So we have two Octobers lining up because it was 270 from low to low coming into this October. And here we have 90 going in, 90 by 135 potentially squaring at 5,200.
Hmm.
So 5,200 we talked about earlier being a potential target. And this is why.
I like that 5,200. I've got a weekly square, half square there, and a
Mhm.
monthly half square just under it at 5183.
Okay. Okay. So
Right in that
it's a
area.
worthy target, I would
Yep.
say.
Yep.
And I'm measuring it from the low before the run up started, so that this is a proper low. First
Hmm.
shot was the 45, which we talked about, last December, right?
Hmm.
And well, we got a little reaction on a very kind of a bullish consolidation right under the line. We broke to the upside, and we took off. We talked about this when it happened because we talked about this square, saying that the next time it'll happen, we'd be back in, we'll be close to March, right? I remember looking at
Hmm.
these lines back in the day.
No question.
And well, and here we are, perfectly in line. So 5,200 seems like maybe 52 and some change, 5,205, something like that. Seems like the target over there. Coming from the other low, we're still doing great. Coming from the October low, so here's where we have low to low. We have an interesting pattern. So it's possible that we actually terminate on this 360,
Yeah.
which would be, classic, right? 360 with a 90-day terminal leg. Perfect. That's
Hmm.
textbook.
Hmm.
And we have something to, it's not just saying that. I mean, not like 360s happen every day. You actually had to spend over a year to get
Right.
there.
Right.
So it's not every day, and we have one. And the other thing is, this is holding a 90-degree cycle pretty tightly, because here, from this low to this high, we did 90 roughly, right? Especially if we
Hmm.
go to the higher low. You see that? We went 90.
Yeah. Yep.
And this low, so we did 9 to the high, and we 270 to the low. And I'm telling you, I just remember, this is a classic kind of a termination cycle. If you go 270 and then 90 to blow off, okay? And
Interesting.
we're doing that.
Yep.
And so, but we need, obviously it needs to get there and score out and do the whole song and dance to tell us that there's a high in place,
Hmm.
which would mean, we'd have to wait for a lower high and all of that. But I'm just saying, we, textbook wise, we have the move that we want that would take us to some kind of a culmination.
And decoding what he's saying is pay attention next week.
Yeah, especially towards the end of the month, right?
Yep.
And
Towards the end of next week.
mhm. And from here, looking at the bigger square, we can just blow right up into 5300. So 5312 would be the upper end of that line.
Hmm.
Okay. And we have 5200. So, I mean, the harder it goes towards the end, the better it is.
Right. The higher the probability of it being a
Yeah.
terminating
And
wave.
we want it to gap and do all the crazy ways, going up. So if it can gap and just really go hard,
Hmm.
maybe with a good, drop on Monday, reverse, run up in here. So that looks like the sort of the box we want to watch for this 360 business, right in there. So that's sort of the target range. It's a little wide, but it's okay. We have a couple of targets. We'll see how it pans out. Key thing is we want it to happen around the 360 bar point.
Which is around March 1st.
Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
So that's something, we shouldn't, it's something really important. Like you said, let's watch it next week. We'll see how it all pans out.
Sure.
And let's go on to the weekly. Weekly is doing very strong. I mean, look at this. Look at all the buying that came in right after the
Yeah.
early week. Looking good. I mean, here's our target.
Yeah, it's pulling right up into the
And
ABCD.
that's, it's 5260.
Right in the
So
middle of your range.
exactly. It's right in the middle.
Yep.
Now, if it gets there, I mean, oh my God, that would be just so classic. And we'll watch that.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see what happens there. Now, barring that, if we blow through that somehow, basis weekly, we got 5,500 roughly. It's really 5464.
Hmm.
That's the next target up. But that 90 is kind of a terminal leg. So once you do 90, something has, usually, especially if you're doing the 90s like that, we looked at the daily. So
Where's
once
your 81 timing? Is that late April, early May?
that's May 6th.
I like that date. I
Yeah.
like that area.
Mm-hmm. So we could certainly do that. We can go up here and terminate, and we can, have a couple of the bar pullback and run right up into the May.
Hmm.
That would be fine. Anyway, we'll see how that pans out. For now, everything is okay. And weekly is certainly okay. There's nothing to cry about. We have a target up here around 52 and a half.
Hmm.
So we can stay focused on that.
Hmm.
Do we have anything to be cautious about? Well, it's just this 90. I mean, this is the thing to watch. If we do the 90, how we terminate there. That's really kind of it. All right. Do you have anything to add to this? I think that's pretty much all I have.
I really like the timing. I really like the stuff that you have. The targets are good. Let's see how it plays out next week.
Mhm.
But a nice strong run next week into those targets would be really sweet.
Right. So we also have a 45-day run from the pullback in January, which is March 8th. So that's
Hmm.
also a possibility, but it's a little bit past that bigger 90,
Sure.
But you see how, a lot of things are stacked here,
Hmm.
and they're grouping pretty tightly. So we need to watch that.
It's called a window.
It's definitely a window. And if you guys like our work, just a reminder to, hit the likes and the and share it and subscribe.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much all they can do, right? And comment. We like
And
all your
comment.
comments. You guys
Yeah.
have been commenting a lot more. So if you have any ideas or if you have anything to say about,
Requests.
yeah, requests or any questions, or if you have some other work agreeing with what we're doing or not, it's good to look at everything.
Mm-hmm.
So bonds, remember that ABCD that you called out, held the
Yeah.
lows here. I mean, look at that. That's a very good holding.
And it did a nice rally today, but
Nice rally right into
right into the
1916 is
resistance. Yeah.
right above that. So let's see what happens here. Just remember the big trade here, in my opinion, is if this logo is taken out.
Yeah.
These ABCD lows getting taken out can be really good trading. So watch for that. In the meantime, not much. We have 1916 is resistance, and we'll see how it handles it. The box here is really the resistance zone, let's say. So it's 1916 to, let's say, 21. It's
Mm-hmm.
sort of the range. It's a little wide, but you can see how market likes to get stuck in there
Mm-hmm.
and get stuck in there often. Let's go to the weekly bonds. The good news is we were looking for a downtrend, and bonds made a lower low and a lower high.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can't argue with that. So I would say the market is in a downtrend. And we'll see what happens. It's all trending down. 114 is our next support, and not much more I can add to that because we talked about it last week. Let's move on to crude. Not much to say here either.
Chopping.
We're going to be speeding through our charts this week. Yeah, not much. And, it's just holding above. I wouldn't even say above. Well, majority of the bars were above the 50% of the square, which is at 77. And of course, today we dropped down, but it really doesn't mean anything because, we have a like big box right here. Let's see what happened. And the funny thing is we're between the 2 points. So we're above 73.5 and holding at the 50%. So far it's looking okay.
Yep.
Let it be there. It's not trending hard, but after these periods, crude has a habit of starting some kind of a trend. So we really got to watch the breakout here.
Yeah, I
And
mean, look at that like May, June, July example.
exactly.
Right
Yeah,
before it
right.
took
Yeah.
off.
Then we had a really nice trading
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of 3 months. So let's watch that. And we've had a similar one, but a little bit bigger. But we've had several months of sideways, so it's coming. Watch this lower trend line. I think that's really important. These two, everything kind of hangs together. Lower trend line, 73.5. If we get down that low, otherwise, if we can settle above 77, I think we're in good shape. It's not quite settling above. It's really above 76. Not much more to add. Do you have anything?
No, I think you covered it well.
All right. Let's move on to crude.
Monthly inside bar kind of says it all. We've been inside.
Yeah, it's well, like I said, we get these really tight bars and then
Mm-hmm.
we end up with a nice breakout.
Mm-hmm.
And well, here's a good example. Back in 2020, you can see how, after that big dramatic low, we came up. All this sideways, really, really tight. And look how many months. And look what the
Months. Yeah.
payoff was, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yep.
really big.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that's happening. So we'll watch it. It's in the consolidation zone. Like we had a big consolidation here. So basis the weekly, we're looking to see. Well, we're kind of waiting for a breakout. You guys know the levels on the daily, and here, the 5/8 is around 79, and the 50% of the square is 73.5. So we're in between that. Not much to do. It's consolidating. So
Sure.
like I said, commodities aren't exactly not
They're
all
not they're
trending
not
right now.
flying. No.
No. And that's the time to just keep your powder dry, just kind of,
And watch vigilantly.
yep, that's the thing. Speaking of sideways, well, here's
There you
gold,
go.
our poster boy for sideways. The thing is, what to notice is the 50% of the square held really well,
Multiple times.
few times. So, that makes it bullish. And you can see, we keep bouncing off of that. So that's clearly support. And that's 2006. Let's see what happens. Not much to say. As long as we're on along the lower boundary, you can certainly trade it short term.
Hmm.
And once we get up into like $100 bounce up into 2097 is what I have, the upper boundary of the box, then you can look to see if we're going to establish ourselves up above that or not. If it's not, we're going to continue sideways. So, but what's funny is other commodities might be selling off and looking weak, but gold is holding just perfectly above 2000. I
Yep.
mean, it's funny how used to it we're getting. It's like we're not bothered by that. It's just normal. Gold's at 2000. Okay.
Right.
And it's not correcting, no deep corrections. I think to be noted, worth noting, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me feel like it's going to do one of those clean out moves before the real move,
Yep. Yep. Gold
like
is
sweep the stops below 2000 and then
mm-hmm.
take off higher.
Or lower. But
Yeah. Or lower.
well,
Right.
I mean, famous gold is very famous for that. You can see, we did a
Right.
false break back here,
Yep.
and here's their down move, fake move, and then the move up.
Right.
Here's a fake move up.
Right.
And yeah, this is it's doing a little flag, looks bullish. So we'll see. It's I mean, you can't get any more bullish on a consolidation. We're above all these old highs.
Yeah.
So it's bullish and waiting. And I think just like crude, this could end up being a good trade. So keep an eye on that. Let's move on to copper. I
Copper's
mean,
has shown some strength, was moving towards the higher end of your box. Yep.
yeah, and we managed to kind of hold above the 50% of the square. So,
Hmm.
it's okay. But are we trending? No.
No.
And so are we trading it? No. That's
Right.
that's enough of that. Let's move on to the weekly. I mean, there isn't a whole
There's
lot to
not a lot
say.
to say. One
No,
end of the
no,
box to the other.
right. Not much to say at all. Weekly, same thing. We had 364 as our support, like a sort of a key support before the 90. And we're kind of more or less holding above that for the last year or so. And not really selling off, getting weak below it. We're kind of holding right in there. So I would say it's more bullish than not. It would have been better if we can hold above the 50% of the square up here. But what to notice is we did break this triangle, and this is a weekly, so things happen in slow motion. That's why we have to stay awake. And so we did the triangle, came back for a check, went
Hmm.
higher, came back for a check. And this check here is exactly on this 36.45,
Right.
and kind of like at the where they meet, lines meet. So that low is important. And from that low, what happened? We rallied for 2 weeks. Okay, if we can rally next week, we might have a trend started. So let's watch it. For now, not much. It's just hold sideways. Weak. Let's move on to the dollar. Dollar did hit our the 2/3 level at 104, 105, and we pulled back to 103 and a half, which is pretty much our 50% of the square. Again, not to be, I mean, it looks boring, but we're holding about the 50%, and we have all this consolidation under that. So it looks like dollar's going to hold, and I would expect it to rally from there.
It's holding the half square, and that's the demarcation line right now.
Exactly. Exactly. And we did do high to low, we did 60. So it's possible that we do low to high another 60. Pretty much a story, not much, right? I mean, we ran up
Mhm.
pretty good for a few weeks. So we have a 1 week pullback, and we're not closing at the lower end. We're kind of closing in the middle, and we're above the 50% of the square on daily. So it looks okay. It looks like a normal kind of a pullback. Nothing squared out up here. So it looks like there's more to go to the upside. And we're treating this pullback as a normal consolidation pullback. Yeah, would you go along with that?
That's a fair assessment. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what can you say? I mean, in the big picture, we've been just ranging in this huge range,
For a long
and
time.
like a 7 point range. Yeah. So
Hmm.
now it's tightening up a bit. So it might start wrapping around this 105, around the 50% of the square.
Mm-hmm.
See how that works out. But for now, that's what's happening. And the euro did break above the 108, but the 5/8 of the square knocked it down. We're back at the 108 level. And I think that, I mean, the fact that 5/8 held, I think we're stuck in this box, this quarter of a square box. So let's see what comes of it. It's just this one day is not quite enough to kind of make a call about the 108.
Mm-hmm.
If we slip below next week, then further weakness. So we'll play it out. We'll see what happens. I would say I would take the short side below 108, and above 108, I'd be cautiously long. It depends how weak the dollar is. But yeah, it's kind of caught right at the 108 level. And I don't really see, we really need to stay on one side to get the trend going again. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Correct.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Pick a side.
It's funny because when markets are sideways like this, we come up with so many stories.
They
All right.
all end the same with less money in your account.
Yeah. Well, if you're trying to, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You brought up natural gas,
Yep.
and we have this core 90 set up, and we got to the 50% of the square. We're down 135 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I think the big deal is, can we hold above it or not? Because if we don't
Yeah.
hold above it, I think we have a lot more to go.
Agreed.
But I don't know how much more, because obviously we can't get to zero. So it's gonna have to be somewhere in here.
Yeah.
It could be some division of it, but this 135 down seems like the ideal place. And so far it's holding. Let's see what happens. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, because it's 135 down, if we do bottom out in here and start to pull up, this is a very good value area, like they say.
Mm-hmm.
So I would watch for that. But if it runs below this, then I would wait for some kind of a big washout and
Yeah.
let it all be said and done.
That almost looks like a slow march pattern, doesn't it?
Well,
The
not
decline.
here.
No, the decline.
Yeah, up here.
The
Yeah,
last
yeah,
decline there, right in
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
That looks like it. But then it should have just gone,
It
like
should have really gone. Yeah. And then
and
reversed.
and the fact that we didn't, and we held the 160 level. Let's see. But there's nothing to do here. If we hold on pullbacks and start moving, you can start trading it. But otherwise,
Yep.
you have to wait to see, because it's on one of these levels. So you have to wait to,
See if it actually
yeah,
holds.
see how it resolves.
Mm-hmm.
And what else? Yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, I guess we could do a 45 from here to the low, but that zero is coming up very close. So we might, we're not
Could
gonna.
be another crude.
Could be another crude. Never know. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we have 45 degrees down at 55 cents. Nat gas at
Wow.
55 cents.
Wow.
I don't know who's going to make money off of this, but let's see. I mean, we could get down there. That's certainly a possibility, right?
Right?
So I'll just put this down to remind us of the 135 down.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. And I'll just use this. What else do we have to look at? Well, Hang Seng, this has been pretty good, acting pretty well.
Yeah.
We saw the low come in, called it out, and sure enough, we started making higher lows and started trading higher. So I think I think we can confirm the lows in, because we took out these consolidation highs, right?
For sure.
So if we can settle above this, I think this low is good, and we can see how it trades. I mean, the real momentum is going to pick up if we can get above this 1854.
Right.
But above this 157.65, 15,765,
Mm-hmm.
it's still very good. It's strong position, and that could be an area to trade to the long side.
Right. If you get a pullback that sits on top of that half square.
Yeah, it's beautiful once you get the corner. So now,
Yeah.
we can trade that.
Sure.
We didn't have to catch it, like we always talk about. So that's good. And you're talking about either the end of the month high or May high. The Dow really quite didn't square out through this whole thing. We had other things squaring out. We had the 360
Mm-hmm.
coming from the first low, and I said, if the first low doesn't hold, we can always go to the second one, because Well, this here it was almost like a double bottom.
Almost, yeah.
Mhm. So if
That's
that's the
coming in
case,
next week again.
yeah, so that lines up, you know. So at 40,000, let's say 290,
Mm-hmm.
that would square it out beautifully. 180 by 360. You just can't do better than that.
Mm-hmm.
And with the same 90-day sort of the
Terminal run.
yeah, terminal run in here. So that's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Everything's in place.
I'm telling you, next week people got to be on alert because I don't know if it's going to be a dud or not, but man, there's a lot of stuff hitting next week.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We do have a lot of stuff because I mean, just think, even if you just look at the Dow, you know, after the 360, there are no other big squares to call out up until we get to 450, and
Mm-hmm.
that's in July. And in between the two, we have another 45-day gap, and that's going to
On
be
May.
May. There we
Yeah.
go.
First week of May keeps popping up.
hmm So yeah, we'll watch it to see. I mean, if price and time hits here, that's going to be epic. So that's
Yep.
what happens. Let's see what happens. I think that's all I got.
Great.
That's
Good coverage
thank you, thank you.
of a boring sideways markets, most of them, but still.
We're holding above so far.
Yeah, I had to widen this channel a little bit. As you see, I had it tighter before.
hmm
And so I widened it a little bit when we bounced right off, when we rallied hard off of this. I mean, again, the key thing here is if you're just looking at structure, right, since this low, we've been pulling back right where we're supposed to
hmm
and making, higher series of higher lows and higher highs.
Right.
Uh, from a from a square standpoint, the important thing is we've now pushed back above, like we were above here. We held it for one day and then we lost it. Now we've pushed above. This is the second day above, a full bar above. Now we want to see, do the pullbacks hold here? Do we sit on top of this? And that's, call it 17,900. As long as we sit on top of this, we can push up to the half square, which is around 18,600. By the
Mhm.
way, all these levels are in a Google Doc spreadsheet, which I will post a link to tomorrow when we post the link to the show once it's done editing. So, you know, is it deep value here? Absolutely not. Is it bearish? No.
No.
We keep pushing higher. As long as we have higher highs and higher lows, you got to go with the trend if you're going to play it. The first thing to watch for is, do we get stuck under this or sit on top of it?
hmm
Because that's going to tell you, what odds favor is going to come next.
Exactly. So far, we're on top of it.
So far, we're on top. That's exactly right. The bears need to really get below this to have any like say in what's going on, right? Because if they push here, then we're taking out two lows and we get under that half square, and then they can start working their, stair stepping lower. But for now, it's the bulls are in control. Let's look at the weekly.
Mm,
See why the highs came in.
that's interesting.
Yep, right on the half square. I mean, this week was an outside bar, right?
Yep, yep.
It's not a reversal because we didn't close down here,
And
but
the
it's
week before was an outside bar.
yeah. So there's a lot of
That's a little toppy, but hey,
yeah,
what do I know?
there's a lot of gyrations here as we're moving into
Yeah.
these highs. But look, this is really important. If we can't exceed this high and clear this, then this will be, a ceiling for now. Doesn't mean we're going to crash down. It just means, maybe we bump around in here, till we hit some timing. But
Do some distribution.
yeah, that too. It's important to recognize that, okay, we got some overhead resistance here.
Mhm.
It's a natural geometric point where there's going to be a pause, and if we can't get on top of it, it'll weigh on the market.
Right.
Anything else you want to add here on NQs?
Well, just that square is important, you know. Like I said, we have timing coming up, and we have, like the S&P is a couple of hundred or 150, couple of hundred points, I think, to run. So it's
Hmm.
got some space. Let's see what the Nasdaq does. You know,
Thinking about timing, the lightning cycle that I found hits tomorrow.
mm,
And that's always good for some energy, and it's an interesting spot in the market to have a bolt of energy come in. So
Right.
that hits tomorrow.
Mhm.
Keep that in mind. Let's shift over to Bitcoin. Bitcoin really didn't have the upside fireworks that we saw in the Nasdaq and the the broader risk markets.
Mhm.
I mean, this is straight up chop all week, and it's chopping around this
Middle
half
week.
square.
Yep. Yep.
So, and if you remember last week, we were talking about from these lows here in November of 22 to the high here was 144 by 450,
Hmm.
which is a pretty good square. And again, it doesn't mean, you get a square. It doesn't mean you reverse and you turn around on a dime. It just means you're going to get some sort of change of character, that something ended there. And it
Hmm.
sure looks like it, right? We were going nicely and aggressively up into it, and then we got this massive congestion and sideways for, this looks like 6, 7, 8 days. So the key level we're watching right now on Bitcoin is this half square, and that's at 51,375. Below it, we're going to push down here and test this trend line, and maybe even test the full square that's, in the 46, 47,000 area,
Hmm.
46.9, 47,000. But this, it looks like something did end here, and now we got to see what comes next. This week we didn't get a lot of clues as to what's coming next because it just chopped around that half square.
Yep.
Anything to add here on Bitcoin?
No, no, it's you covered it. That's
Okay.
what's happening for now.
As far as the commodities go, much like Barry was showing you with the big five, it's a lot of lethargy, I think is the right word. I was thinking, what is it? Is it disinterest? It's just lethargy. Like they're selling off some of
Hmm.
them, but they're
Yeah.
not selling off aggressively. They're just kind of dripping lower. Like you were showing with natural gas. I mean, corn and soybeans both made new lows this week, so they're still looking for lows. Wheat has made a higher low. I'm not going to go over it this week because it's still sort of working through this ABCD that we put on last week. So there's nothing to do there. It has maintained a higher low so far compared with last November's low. So
Mhm.
that is a bullish sign for wheat in comparing it to corn and soybeans, with both continue to sort of drip lower. Um, Cocoa is just it's blowing off. It continues to rocket higher. It's pretty amazing. It looks like a total
Mhm.
squeeze is going on there.
And we called
Um,
that, a couple of years ago.
Absolutely, I called
Mhm.
it. But the frustrating part, which we've talked about, is I'm not in it anymore, right? I got out, and this thing just keeps running. It just shows you that the advantages of leaving a runner in when you catch one of these things,
Mhm.
because it has been spectacular, spectacular. Coffee's another one we've talked about with a good bullish setup and a pattern. It looks like it's also doing a lot like wheat. No danger of making a new low yet or a lower low yet, but it's looks like it's trying to finish up an ABCD. So we're going to watch that this next week, and then hopefully have it turn around and show us it's ready to go and momentum ready to kick in, and we'll put it on the show. Gold, silver, copper, as Barry reviewed, they're all in triangles or consolidating or in congestion, so there's nothing to do there. Crude is pulling back. We just had another weekly inside bar. It looks bullish, but it's just basically sideways for now. So let's talk about one that I wanted to show you that Barry talked
Mhm.
about a little bit is nat gas. Let's talk about that one. So here's what I want to show you on this.
Mhm.
We came down and we were this was sort of the drip, 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 drip lower. And then we looked like we were going to fall into this next square. And then one day we shot up, and now we're trying to sit on top of this full square. And this full square on that gas here is at the like 164, 165 level.
Mhm.
As long as the pullbacks stay on top of that, it gives us our first building block. And the bigger thing with nat gas, as we talked about last week, is look at the bigger picture where we are.
Wow.
This is a
Hmm.
weekly. Yeah, this is 2015, 2016. Here's
Hmm.
2020,
Is
and
that what
here's
they
where
call a
we are.
buy zone, Ben?
Yeah, yeah. It's where the market has historically recognized value, and look at it on the monthly basis, and then you really get a picture of the value that people
Hmm.
see here. So there's 2020, 15, 16, 2012, 98, 99,
94.
94, 95. So people like to buy nat gas in this area for value reasons, right? Maybe it's the cost of taking it out of the ground, maybe it's add in the cost of transportation or whatever, but at these prices there is some value here from
Hmm.
someone. So what are we doing? Are we jumping in and buying it? Absolutely not. What we're looking at on a
But we're
daily
thinking about
basis,
it.
right? What we're looking at from a daily basis is, can we get a first higher low and a reversal?
Hmm.
Drop down to the 4 hour. Can you get a higher low and a reversal and a higher high? And can we see, something to start building here that we can say, okay, there's there's support, there's structural support here that we can buy against with a decent risk reward ratio, where our stop, where we know we're wrong, is not far away.
Hmm.
And I think that's how you have to treat this. And what it looks like from a some for bigger picture standpoint in all of commodity land is that these things have been correcting since the sort of the height of, well, after Russia invaded Ukraine and all these commodities took off, and now the corrections have been taking place for almost 2 years now in some of them, and they're starting to get into areas where, if we see this evidence of either squaring out at a low, or timing comes in, or we see structure start building where we have those higher highs and higher lows. This is where you want to get involved because it'll set us up for decent moves higher. I know you covered nat gas. Anything else you want to add based on the charts I showed?
Well, you see how it's not in the news. That's the first thing to notice.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I think we got to watch it here. We could, March is coming up. We could be putting in a low. I mean, this
Yep.
is the value area. There's no joke. So it's really a matter of, how to get positioned.
How to get involved, right? Wait for the signal and get involved.
The good
Let's
thing
look.
is we know it's closer to a low than a high.
Yes, that's for
And
sure.
it's just a matter of, I mean, we'll find the square if it squares out. Otherwise, if it's a long, elongated kind of a low, we'll watch it. We'll watch the pattern and see when it starts breaking out. So,
Now let's jump to the one commodity that I think is set up and is ready to go, and had a good week based on its pullback, and it's cotton.
mhm,
We've been talking about this one for weeks. Of course, the big base that we broke out of was right here,
mhm,
in late January, early February. What did we do this week? We pushed up and then we pulled back. Just a 1 day pullback, Barry, your favorite kind of pullback, because that's the
mhm.
good sign of a bull market. So we had 1 day pullback, inside day, and then up. And look at where the low is. We didn't even get down to the half square
Right.
before we reversed. So this little hook is where you want to get involved, right?
Mhm,
Because that's a sign of, okay, we had this push, 1 day of selling, inside day, up bar, another inside day today. Next week could be a decent week for cotton.
mhm,
That's the setup that we're seeing, and the setup that's possible. The thing that I want you to see, what's going to hold it back and also propel it if we can get through it from a big week, not the weekly, but the monthly. This is the weekly, right? And again, look at the pullback of this week. It's an inside bar for the week, but look where the pullback is. The low is above the half square.
mhm,
And it's sitting, I mean, you can see when I put the cursor on here, it's sitting on top of all this consolidation, right? That's about 16, 17 month worth of consolidation. That's a bullish pullback. And they didn't even get a down bar this week. They only got an inside bar. So one of Barry's tricks is, when you take out the high of the inside bar, it's a signal.
mhm, mhm.
So if we take out the high of this week, which was what was the high? 94.90. That could tell you things are getting ready to go here. Now let's look at the monthly and see why maybe we're slowing down a little bit here. There you go.
Yeah.
See right here?
Mm-hmm.
It also tells you that if we can push through this, and the level on the monthly here is, call it 95.60.
Mm-hmm.
And look where we closed, 93.49. So if we get a couple bucks higher and get above this full square, I mean, this opens up 123
Mm-hmm.
on a monthly basis. And look where we've stalled in the past here. And then looks what happens when you get through it. Right?
Right.
That's kind of move. Here we stalled here, stalled here. So this is in a really, really important spot. But when it gets through, you get these spikes.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm really bullish on cotton. Price action on these different time frames, and then bigger picture where we're banging our head up against really important resistance that if we push through, the momentum and the buying could really kick in and take this thing for a pretty good ride.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you're seeing on cotton? Any timing? Any squares stuff
Well,
that you
I
look
think,
at?
I mean, it looks like it broke out. I mean, this is the place to really watch and start trading the long side, That's really it. I mean, we did break out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a good. I'm glad you put the spotlight on it because it's there. People just have to follow it.
Yeah, just watch the price action now and pick your spots. But the bullish setup is in play, multiple time frames with pretty good upside. So it's a
Mhm.
pretty favorable risk reward here, and that's the kind of setups that we look for. That's it for me on the commodity side. As I said, it's a light week, but it's also one of those times when you look through the board and you say, that this is like the what do they call it? Slack tide, like when you're between low tide and high tide, when the shift's going to happen.
Mhm.
That's kind of what it feels like. I don't know that there's any timing that's gonna cause that this coming week or next week or anytime soon, but it just feels that way in these markets. And Barry, that's one topic I wanted to talk to you about is that, a lot of the tools that we use are very analytical, very specific, but part of being a good trader is to
Mhm.
develop your own intuition. And how do you like in your journey in trading, how did you like balance that sort of, the gut instinct versus the square is at this number, 16.37. Like how do you balance those sort of things in the market when you're trading?
You mean between the technical and sort of the
The
intuitive? Is that what you
Yeah,
mean?
the intuition, because you and I always talk about this. Everything looks great at the highs, right? And then
Absolutely.
it turns. And everything looks terrible at the lows, and then
Right.
it turns.
Mm-hmm.
And what part does intuition play, like when you're up at a high and everything's screaming and everything looks great and you say, I just something in my gut tells me I need to lighten up, or I'm just going to stay in cash, or what part do you let that part of your intuition play in going into your trading and making your decision making?
Well, there's something that sort of puts a veil over your intuition, and
Mhm.
and that would be fear. You
Wow,
know,
that's a good point. Yeah.
fear of this and fear of the other thing. And what I've noticed is if I can be, well, not necessarily fearless, but let's just say more technical,
Hmm.
that helps me relax a little bit because I'm really leaning on the technicals that you trust, like the squares that we use. Then I'm able to kind of see everything that's happening. The problem with fear is if you're either scared of losing out or scared of getting stopped or scared of anything, really, what happens is you don't have access to everything the market is trying to show you. And this kind of goes back to Mark Douglas stuff that we both are kind of grounded in.
Hmm.
So one of the things I'm always like aware of is like, am I having any fear here? Fear of losing, fear of making, fear of, missing
Fear of
out,
missing out, right?
and fear of not, I mean, there's so many types that can come into trading. So what seems like the balance that I've found is not something I did, you just struggle to deal with it. And then eventually you kind of work yourself into a comfortable space and a sort of set of steps. And that is to lean, on the entry. I don't try to guess at all. Even, intuitively, we might know, hey, that's squared out. I'm not going to go by the low, even though I'm 100% sure
Right,
intuitively.
right, right.
I would wait for a mechanical signal and just take it because my intuition, I know, is not consistent. It's there most of the time, but then also it could be off a little bit. Maybe I'm having an off day. Maybe I didn't have enough sugar in the system,
Right.
right? And your sensitivity is off a little bit. So I know I can't count on it, but it's kind of enjoyable. So it's there. And but I really lean on the technicals for entries, only because I got to be consistent on the entries. If you don't enter something for some reason and you skip out on your system, then you're doing more harm than good.
So you try to be really rigidly mechanical on the entries.
On the entries, yeah. And like one of the things I learned from working with Mark Douglas was entries can be like that. You can be very mechanical on the entries, but the place you have more room to be intuitive is on the taking profit side. So because you don't want to kind of block your creativity either, like intuition and creativity sort of goes together. And that's the place where sort of it's unlimited, right? It's outside. You can be as creative as you want. And so I tend to put that more on the other side where, okay, where would you want to take profit? Because I have very good, I mean, we have very good systems for entry
Mm-hmm.
and we have decent systems for exits. Like we hardly wait from a square to get into a square to get out. I mean, that's just a lot of patience, right? But we take profits in between. And sometimes we leave a runner in, sometimes we don't. Like Coco is a good example, right? You got in really good and you got out and then Coco ran.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing to do is you want to be intuitive on the other side. And sometimes, not sometimes, I would say most of the time when I'm getting out, intuitively, I'm like, well, I should leave something in. It's going to run a little bit more. And the argument ends up being, well, it could run a little more, but that's okay. It's better than if it doesn't and I have to give up all this, right?
And so that's a very good point. That's where you're making sure that the fear of missing out doesn't override your intuition and your decision making
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in that case,
In
right?
that case, yep. So I think you still need to sort of, I think it's good to be in touch with your intuition and really have a sense of that because that's really you, that's what you bring to the table. And you don't want to sort of stunt its growth, let's say,
Right?
or
Right.
to limit it. So, you need an outlet. So the outlet could be on the other side. Because, just think about it. Entry is mechanical, and then your stops are mechanical, or they should be. Then what's left? Left is, well, how high can a market go? I mean, we're watching these markets go through squares, go through levels. We saw Nvidia the other day, perfect square out on a bunch of levels, and boom, it breaks out, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
never know. On the up, when one market's running, like somebody said, there's squares from here all the way to the moon, and eventually a market that goes super high has to go through a bunch of levels. So which level is it?
Right.
And nobody really knows. I mean, there are probabilities. So I think the intuitive thing would be to use the intuition in there. When you get to certain levels, you can kind of check to see, do I really want to take everything here? Do I want to leave a couple in?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to leave a couple in, great. Where do I want to move the stops to? So I think once you're in profit, you can be as intuitive as you want because
Right.
there's no risk and there's no fear. Just like we talk about, once you have a free trade where your stops are at break even, you notice how your fear level drops down. There's no fear, everything's cool. And now it switches to the other side, fear of missing out. Well,
Right.
if I get out, what happens? So, but if you think about your own trading, once you get to a break even or a little bit of profit, or a lot of profit is obvious, but long as you get break even or above, your fear drops off because now, you're locked in to a zero trade. You can make as much money as you want and zero risk.
Right.
And in that state, you can be way more intuitive and be able to trust it because fear is not in there, sort of distorting that. Anyway, that's what I've noticed.
That's a really good point. So it does relate back to the Mark Douglas stuff, which is you have to get that fear out of your trading. You
Yeah,
can't have it in there.
absolutely right. And you have to kind of tune it to, how it works with you. And the only way is like exactly what somebody else is doing won't work with you because you have different, like, we talk about, well, you can copy my trades, but we can't copy my fear.
No,
You can't copy my
no,
intuition.
no.
So that's why you can sort of lock in, mechanize some part of it, and then sort of open it up on the other part where
Right,
the real limit is. Limit is not in where your stop is. The limit is in how much profit are you making to allowing yourself to make.
right,
Are you making the maximum amount? Are you going from square to square? Or are you getting out somewhere in between, right?
right.
Consistently. So I think if you let your intuition sort of guide you on the open end where you can take profits, I think that's I mean it's a better place to be. So
Yeah, and that's a very good system and a way to advise people is to be mechanical, like brutally mechanical on your entries and be
mhm.
more creative and more intuitive on the side that does have the unlimited aspect to it,
Right.
which
Exactly.
is but how
Exactly.
much you can make.
Yeah. And you can still be mechanical. I mean, have your levels and, your exit points and resistance points. But it's still like we know, when a market gets going, it gets going. It can go. So your intuition's probably a better guide.
Right.
So, work at least if you're not doing it, you can be aware and see how it works out. And you can also now be aware of how much fear you're sort of creating in watching the market and how that can you know, distract you from what's really happening.
I'll tell you one of the big breakthroughs mentally for me was having the runners, like keeping a runner and just leaving it in, right?
Mm,
Just letting it go. And that was it's a hard thing to do because then your mind starts saying, well, if it comes back to my stop, I'm giving up all this profit and all this other mental craziness that starts going on that limits you from capturing a lot of the upside.
mhm.
And so that to me that's a great place to be creative and intuitive and sort of trust that gut in you that you let something run and don't let that, in this case, fear of missing out or fear of giving up profit uh limit you.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's hard to realize that when you're in the moment, because you're
Yeah,
focused on other things.
right.
So, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
But
that's a good discussion. I mean, we could do hours on this because the mental aspect of trading, what we focus on primarily is the squares and the technicals and things like that. But the most time that traders should be spending is getting your mind right, because that's where the leaps in your performance and your productivity really take place. And I never forget the first time I read the Mark Douglas book. I
mm,
couldn't sleep because I was so excited because
mm,
it felt like it was a huge switch in my brain occurred, and that was it was like one of those seminal moments when you remember when that happens. Like you realize how difficult it is to trade successfully if your mind is not right. It's virtually impossible
mhm.
because there's so many ways for you to get tripped up.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, we'll continue these sort of end of show discussions because I know they help me and they help Barry because we talk about things that we should be, remembering and
Mm,
executing and doing on a regular basis. And give us feedback if you like these things because we'll continue doing it. And please, we appreciate all the support we've gotten recently, the likes, the subscribes, the ringing the bells and the comments. Please continue to do that. Help us grow the channel, and we'll do more content like we did this week with that NVIDIA single stock show. That was fun, and we really enjoyed doing that. So this week's coming up is a big week timing wise. You know, Barry's segment, he went over a lot of the timing hits that are coming up end of this week, early March. We got the lightning cycle on Saturday that's coming in, so we should get some decent clues as to what the next move, most likely next move is going to be coming out of next week based on the how things act going in and how they act coming out of this important time window. So as we always say, rest up, get ready, know your levels, and we'll see you Sunday night. Good job, Barry. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Ben. Good job. Good questions. And well, because yeah, I mean that's what I mean. You have to have questions to pull things out,
Right.
and to be able to sort of get it on the table and look at it. So very good. All right, good job. We'll talk soon.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.